Alright, so the expansion is here. Dragonflight finally launched, and holy shit, that first day was brutal. I don't know about anyone else, but I couldn't play for 6 hours when it launched. So much for that 60-second video about the head start I made the other day. But enough of that. You're here to find out about gearing up your character, increasing that sweet item level. But don't worry, because I'll be explaining all the different ways you guys can obtain gear and push that item level as high as you can before the raid. So with Dragonflight, there are a whole lot more ways to gear up than ever before. You still have the traditional methods of PvP and dungeons, but now we have a huge important thing with crafting because of the new profession revamp, which, by the way, looks pretty awesome and seems like it's going to be a pretty desirable way for people to gear up. World quests are pretty normal too, but then you have some really interesting ways to gear up via world PvP. So if there is one thing I would say to take away from this video is that there is a ton of different ways to gear up, and not a lot of them are explained very well, so we're going to kind of break all of those things down. So starting with dungeons. Normal and heroic dungeons are both spammable, and you can literally queue up for these and run them however many times you want. Normal mode will get you 346 item level gear, and heroic is going to be dropping 359. Mythic 0 is a different story. You can only get loot from Mythic 0s once per week, but the gear out of there is actually really good, and that's item level 372. So I would strongly suggest that you get them knocked out before every Tuesday. Run every single one of them. There's a ton of people doing them right now, so if you're a DPS, I would say just start your own group, so that way you guys can avoid getting declined and just make things go a lot smoother. Next we have Mythic Plus, which isn't open yet, but we need to cover it regardless. So, as this is going to be one of those major ways for you guys to gear up your characters outside of raiding or PvP, just a friendly reminder that Mythic Plus opens up along with the raids when Season 1 starts on the 3rd week, which is going to be December the 13th. Instead of going over every level to figure out the item level rewards for Mythic Plus, I'm just going to put up the chart so you guys can check it out. Feel free to pause it or come back at any time to look at it. So the key takeaway for Mythic Plus content is that completing a plus 20 will reward you with 405 item level gear at the end of the dungeon, and then 421 item level gear is going to be coming out of your grade vault. So once week 3 hits, try to really push and just start grinding, guys. Try to get those best possible rewards out there. Speaking of rewards, the Valor system is returning in Dragonflight. Valor is currently used to upgrade your Mythic Dungeon gear. To obtain Valor, you simply just need to run Mythic Plus. You use that Valor currency to upgrade gear that only comes out of Mythic Plus. It turns out that the Great Vault loot too can be upgraded as well. The cost of Valor to upgrade your gear really just depends on the item level and what type of gear it is. Keep in mind, upgrading weapons is going to cost the most. One thing to remember when you're upgrading Valor gear at really high levels, you're going to need a pretty good Mythic Plus rating in order to get those higher item levels. For example, if you want to upgrade a piece of gear to 402, you're going to need a Mythic Plus rating of 1000. To upgrade your gear to 415, you're going to need a rating in Mythic Plus of 2400. To upgrade your items with Valor, talk to Cruxian at the Gladiator's Refuge in Valdrakken. So looking at the raid, once it opens up, Blizzard has changed the way item level works. In Shadowlands, every boss dropped the same item level except for the last boss, but in Dragonflight they have adjusted it quite a bit. For example, there are 3 different item level drops for different bosses. So let's look at LFR first. The first 4 bosses, Iranog, Taros, Council, and Sarnath, all drop 376 item level gear. Kurog and Dathia drop 382, and finally, Broodkeeper and Razagath will be dropping 385 item level gear. On normal difficulty, the first 4 bosses drop 389, the middle 2 drop 395, and the last 2 drop 398. With Heroic, the first 4 drop 402, the middle 2 bosses drop 408, and the last 2 drop 411. And then finally with Mythic, the first 4 drop 415, the middle 2 drop 421, and the last 2 bosses drop 424 item level gear. Now let's take a look at open world content. The first major one is World Quests. Now with World Quests, the rewards are adjusted based on your item level and also your level. So when you hit level 70, you can get gear from World Quests that's going to be from 340 all the way up to 356 at the highest level. Primal Storms are back, which is similar to the ones from the pre-patch event, but these ones happen to be in the Dragonflight zones. Every 6 or so hours, 2 invasions will hit different zones, and it's pretty much just exactly like it was during the pre-patch. You go there and you kill mobs. There are no quests or anything special surrounding these events. You just show up and kill stuff and collect the currency. There are 2 forms of currency that you're going to be getting from these events, which are Elemental Overflow and Storm Sigils. Elemental Overflow is easier of the 2 to get, which just drops in abundance from all the mobs during this event. You get Storm Sigils by turning in Primal Cores to an NPC called Rathishi in Valdrakken. There are 4 possible cores to get. There's Fire, Earth, Air, and Water, which means you can only collect 4 of these per week, meaning one for each element. So what do you get with these two forms of currency? Mithraza and Valdrakken will sell you 359 item level gear that you can buy with the Elemental Overflow. Rathishi sells 385 gear that you could buy with the Storm Sigils. Now keep in mind that in order to buy the gear with these Storm Sigils, you need to actually first buy the gear from Mithraza with the Elemental Overflow. Essentially, the Storm Sigil gear is to be looked at as a way to upgrade your 359 gear to something better. Now, this is more of a slower way to gear up your character, but if you make sure to get 4 Storm Sigils per week, you'll actually be able to get a couple of these pieces of gear before the raid opens up. And it should be pretty easy to do. You just go to the event and you just join a random group with the group finder, or go with some friends or guildies. PvP is pretty similar to how it worked in Shadowlands. The initial honor gear here is 340, and each piece of gear can be upgraded 5 times. Currently, Conquest gear is not yet in the game, so you guys are just going to have to hold off on that and just farm honor right now. Now, there is another form of PvP gear that you guys can seek out, and it's entirely focused on just war mode. So, Fieldmaster Embrath sells 366 item level gear with a currency called Bloody Tokens. Now, you get these from doing war mode world quests, or collecting those crates which fall from the sky, and basically they're contested via which faction. And they're pretty similar to how it worked in BFA. So when you have war mode on and you're just flying around the different zones, keep an eye out for that airdrop icon that's going to be flying around. So there's another vendor right next to Fieldmaster Embrath, and she's going to sell you 385 gear, which basically looks like the upgraded version for the gear that you buy from the war mode tokens. However, you need to get another currency called Trophy of Strife. Now, I looked everywhere and I could not find out how or where to actually get these to drop. So I'm not even sure if it's in the game yet. If anyone knows, please let me know in the comments. And one other quick thing I forgot to mention about the open world content is world bosses. So they drop 395 item level gear, but again, we're going to need to wait for the raid to open up, so I don't think they're even going to be able to be killed until week 3. So now let's talk professions. The item level you get from professions varies quite a bit, but you can target specific item level gear by getting an item called Titan Training Matrix. Now, these are crafting reagents that actually drop off the last bosses in the different dungeons. The higher the difficulty, the better the quality matrix will be. For example, if you get the one from Mythic 0, which is rank 4, it can make items be crafted in the item level range of 372 to 382. So if you manage to get hold of one of these, hit up the work order system and have someone craft you a nice piece of gear. Just keep in mind that there is a bit of RNG when it comes to the stats and the item level of the gear being crafted, which is why it's better to find a crafter that has a higher skill rating. Just keep in mind that when you find a really skilled crafter, you're probably going to have to pay a little more just for that higher quality. So as you can see, there's a ton of different ways to get gear in Dragonflight. Way more than we've ever had in the past, and quite frankly, I think it's kind of cool. So let's talk about how I would go about this, the most non-BS and quick way to gear up. But before we do that, I would just like to ask that if you guys haven't already, please smash that like button and subscribe to my channel. Help me reach my goal of 1,000 subscribers by New Year's, and in return, I'll keep pumping out as much helpful videos and guides for you guys that I can. Alright, so let's get back to what I would do to gear up as quick as I can on a fresh character. So once you hit max level, I would start queuing for normal dungeons and doing world quests while you wait. And then once you're high enough item level to get into heroic queues, start doing those. But if there's primal invasions up, do that above all else. And then once you hit 340 item level, I would start running Mythic 0. And host your own group so you guys get some quick invites, and you guys don't get declined for having a low item level. Now I think 340 is totally fine to do Mythic 0s because I think they're pretty easy. So then after that, when you have all the Mythic 0s done for the week, make sure you guys are doing primal invasions. And then depending on what profession you picked up, maybe start collecting resources to craft yourself something. For example, if you're an engineer, start maybe working on getting yourself those engineer goggles. And after you guys have those 2 activities done every week, I mean for these first 2 weeks, that's all you guys really need to do right now. At least until Mythic Plus and the raid opens up. And then if you guys are watching this, 3 weeks later, obviously you guys want to be doing Mythic Plus and the raids. And I think that'll just about wrap up this video. Thank you so much for watching this video, you guys, and before we go, I just want to ask you real quickly, how are you guys liking Dragonflight so far? Let me know in the comments, and like always, I will see you guys in the next video.